Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something truly mind-bending, impartially unpacking Chris Langan's profoundly complex cognitive-theoretic model of the universe, which is usually just called the CTMU. Now, if you're looking for a framework that attempts to seamlessly bridge the deepest, most complex questions of quantum physics with profound metaphysical theology, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to jump right into the ultimate questions of existence, using the structure of the CTMU as our guide to see exactly how this model attempts to map out the fundamental nature of reality itself. So, does God exist? According to the source material, if we're even going to begin discussing a true theory of everything, we literally cannot avoid this question. We have to establish a foundational premise. And Langan boldly answers this with a definitive yes. But he doesn't just do it through pure faith. He argues it through strict logic. He states that reality itself inherently possesses a fundamental identity. Basically, when you say the word reality, you are identifying a specific, all-encompassing substance. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The identity of reality, 2. The great self-simulation, 3. The mechanics of consciousness, 4. Creating heaven or hell, and 5. The structure of evil. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the identity of reality. Langan's foundational premise is that God isn't just some being sitting on a cloud somewhere, but is rather identity itself. Reality and God are completely intertwined in a unified mathematical structure. The source actually draws a direct parallel to the ancient biblical story of Moses at the burning bush to illustrate this. You know, when Moses asks for a name, the response he gets isn't a standard title. It's simply, I am that I am. It's pure being, pure identity. According to Langan, when you deduce the properties of a unified reality, it perfectly matches this ancient description of a God who is quite literally existence itself. What's really fascinating here is how Langan broadens this out. He argues that when you deduce the properties of this central universal identity, properties like omniscience, omnipresence, and most importantly, consciousness, you find that the world's major religions are all actually describing the exact same underlying structure. Whether it's the Tao and Taoism dictating the way reality flows, or God in the Abrahamic traditions, they are all pointing to the exact same central substance and principle of reality. Take Buddhism, for example. The model interprets the Buddhist concept of sunyata, or emptiness, in a really unique way. Langan views this not as just a void of nothingness, but as pure syntax. Think of it like the blank underlying operating system of reality, sitting there right before any physical objects are actually loaded into it. It's the blank slate of consciousness. And within his model, this serves as further proof that reality is fundamentally mental and fundamentally sentient right down to its base level. Moving right along to Section 2, the great self-simulation. So if reality actually has a mind, how does it physically manifest the universe we see around us every single day? Well, to understand this self-simulation, we really have to define panentheism. Now, this is distinctly different from regular pantheism, which simply says the universe is God. In panentheism, God is distributed over the physical universe, but God is also vastly greater than and outside of it. The source explains that the physical universe we see around us just cannot exist by itself. It absolutely requires a greater, unifying medium to hold its physical entailments and coherence together. The easiest way to grasp this is through a computer analogy, which is incredibly helpful. Think of physical reality, the space, the time, the physical objects around you, as a static visual display. In physics, these are just static states. But how do these states actually change? How does time move forward? Langan argues that the physical display simply cannot process itself. God provides the unseen processing functionality, operating in a non-terminal domain totally outside of space and time that actually takes these static states and continuously updates them. Basically, we are living in the display, and God is the processor. All right, Section 3, the mechanics of consciousness. Zooming way down into the microscopic mechanics, we have to ask, how does the processor actually update the display at the most fundamental quantum level? Langan states that to run a simulation like this, you have to quantize it. You need a specific, ultimate, irreducible object that can handle both the static display and the dynamic processing at the exact same time. In the CTMU, this is called an identity operator. Everything in the entire universe is built out of these tiny processing quanta. And the way this operator works is a simple, relentless 3-step loop. Step 1, it takes input from the outside world. Step 2, it recognizes and processes that input internally using syntax. And Step 3, it returns it to the world as a brand new external state. According to Langan, this continuous throughput, this subjective internal state of taking in data and outputting a reality, is literally what consciousness is at the quantum scale. Which naturally leads us to a bizarre, but honestly highly logical question based on the premise. Is the table you're sitting at right now conscious? Because everything in the physical universe is made of these identity operators. Langan asserts that yes, matter is generically conscious. However, at the microscopic level, these forces are underdeterminative, meaning the rules alone don't lock in every single outcome. Quantum mechanics is probabilistic. So what collapses the probability and determines the actual events? We do. Our collective human will, harmonized by the central processor, literally creates the universe we experience. Which takes us to Section 4, creating heaven or hell. Zooming back out to the macro level, we can apply these exact same mental mechanics to the human experience to answer a massive question. What happens when we die? According to the source material, your consciousness fundamentally persists after physical death. Because reality is fundamentally mental, and you are a processing node within it. You don't just evaporate into oblivion. But your destination, where you actually end up, depends entirely on who you truly are and the state of your relationship with the ultimate identity, the primary processor. The mechanics of this are chillingly logical within the model. If a person despises God or is profoundly evil, they displease the primary processor. God essentially turns away and cuts that person off from the central harmonious simulation. But remember, the mind still persists, right? It desperately wants to live. So what happens? This completely isolated, disconnected mind is forced to generate its own reality. And if you are an inherently bad or evil person, the world your mind constructs for itself will inherently be an evil world. This isolated, self-generated nightmare, that is exactly what Langan describes as hell. It's exactly like that famous John Milton quote, which perfectly echoes Langan's point here. Because everything in this model has a foundational mental aspect. Reality isn't just stuff out there. What goes on in your mind takes on an absolute reality of its own. Once severed from the primary processor, the internal world your mind generates becomes entirely, terrifyingly real to you. Finally, Section 5, the structure of evil. This brings us to examining how this entire framework explains the literal existence of adversarial forces right here in the physical display. Langan argues that God, being the ultimate identity, has a perfect boundary. God cannot take imperfection or contradiction into himself, because that would destroy his perfect coherence. Therefore, logic mathematically demands an absolute antithesis to define that perfect boundary. In this model, the devil or anti-God isn't just a spooky campfire story. Satan is a structural, mathematical necessity of reality. Because Satan hates existence, he lacks his own organic coherence. To actually manifest in our world, he has to gain coherence by hijacking human beings, what Langan calls secondary operators. The source claims this adversarial force essentially forms the dark core of power structures. It exploits the organizational skeletons of massive corporations and governments to consume human resources. By doing this, evil achieves a massive, coordinated scale, allowing it to wield immense power in our physical display. Which brings us to the ultimate application of the CTMU. If Langan is right, and the universe is constantly, dynamically regenerating right now based on our collective perspectives and willpower, well, what kind of reality is your mind helping to process today? Are we aligning with the ultimate identity to create the best of all possible worlds, or are we allowing adversarial forces to hijack our systems and build hell on earth? I'll leave you with that to process. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.